going to be talking about innovation for neurodiversity in youth justice settings. I'm Becca Randall. I'm the mental health lead of Health Innovation Kent Surrey in Sussex, and I'm joined by a huge team today, so thank you for all your support. If you could kindly go to the next slide. A little bit of housekeeping from us. For those that couldn't come, we've recorded the webinar and we will make that available with the slides and the toolkit after the event. Please put yourself on mute so we can share the webinar afterwards. Use the chat function to ask questions. We will try and answer as many as we can today, but any that we can't answer, we will share with you as a frequently answered questions slide after the event. As I said, they'll be shared. For those innovators that have joined us today that want to talk to us around the neurodiversity innovation in youth justice settings, that feel that they would like to share with the wider system, please reach out. We'll put details in the chat during the session. So a little bit of a disclaimer from me. We're going to be joined by a number of innovators. Health Innovation Kent Surrey Sussex doesn't endorse commercial products included. We're just showcasing some of the innovators that we've been working with. So we will make that disclaimer available within the toolkit, but I just wanted to make that clear before we start. Next slide, please, Eleanor. So we've got a fantastic agenda today. I'm going to hand over to Peter, a friend and colleague from NHS England, and we're going to hear from colleagues from Peer Power, Chloe and Jack. We're going to hear from 4 innovators that are already working in youth justice settings, and then we're going to hear from 2 innovators that are wanting to extend to youth justice settings at the end of the session, and then we're going to close. Next slide, please. So before I hand over to Pete, just a reminder, as I said, I'm Becca. I'm the mental health lead from Health Innovation Kent Surrey in Sussex. This is our bread and butter. For those that aren't aware of what a health innovation network does or what we do, we are a network of networks. There are 15 of us and we are based in Kent Surrey in Sussex, and our role is around spreading evidence-based innovation to the wider health and care system. So without further ado, and I'll be back, but I'd like to introduce Peter, who is from NHS England, Health and Justice Commissioner, who has funded this piece of work. So thank you, Peter. Over to you.
Thanks, Becca, and huge hi to everybody, and thanks for coming to this launch of this really important resource. I always find it slightly odd doing these kind of talks to a screen, so do forgive me. So big thanks particularly as well to Peer Power for the support they've given to Becca and Eleanor and colleagues, because I think we've all got that fundamental commitment to ensuring that children's experience and voices. Have we got somebody need to go on mute? But children's experiences inform the way we think about the design and delivery of services. So I'm a member of the NHSE Health and Justice commissioning team for the South East region. Currently the commissioner for 3 different children's secure settings, so 2 secure children's homes, the new secure school, and Cookham Wood, which was a YOY until it moved to being adult estate quite recently. And I think it's just been a sort of observation of mine in terms of how our understanding of neurodiversity has grown significantly over the 8 years I've been in my post. And I think we're all still on that learning journey around understanding the impact of neurodiversity, or the for the children and young people that we work with. We have seen the growth in children's secure settings that's been reflected in the community in terms of huge demand for assessments for neurodivergent conditions. And we still continue to work in terms of looking at, actually, if we've got the assessment, if a child has had an assessment, how do we support both those children and young people and staff working with them in terms of understanding how that impacts on their experience of being in touch with criminal justice services. And also, I think, in terms of understanding how that impacts their sort of relationship with offending in terms of choices that have been made and behaviours, and ensuring that practitioners have at least got a level of insight into how neurodiversity can have that impact on our children and young people. So I think very much it's a case now of handing over to our colleagues. I know Peer Power are going to talk us through some of their experience and some of our marvellous presenters. And thanks again for coming along today.
Thanks, Peter. That's great. Next slide, please, Eleanor. So, and the next slide. So I think it's really important to, when we talk about neurodiversity, we talk about neurodiversity in its wider context here today. I don't need to convince any of you, I'm sure in the room, because that's why you're here, that we know that there's a huge prevalence of neurodiversity in youth offending settings. And you can see here from the research that there are higher reported prevalence rates in almost every single neurodevelopmental disorder. I'm not going to read them all out, but autism, 15% reported prevalence in youth, in young people in custody, compared to 1 to 2% in the general population. And I think the one that always shock, but they all shock me, but the one that always kind of rings true or alarms me most of all is the speech and language and communication disorders rates between 60 and 90 compared to 1 to 7% in the general population. So we know that there's an issue. I think on this journey, we're going to hear from some fantastic innovators working or starting to work in this space. But I think what I want to point out is there's a paucity of innovation. There's a real opportunity to grow this area. So that's the first kind of takeaway from me. Next slide, please. So we worked with Peter and everyone here presenting today to create a toolkit, which Eleanor will share with you in a little bit if you haven't been able to download it already. But I think what I want to just reiterate is the importance of innovation in youth justice settings. I've already said there's a paucity, but we know that mental health and neurodiversity services are those people with mental health, young people with mental health and neurodivergent young people really face some really difficult issues and barriers to accessing those services. We know that there is a huge need for assessment therapy, diagnostic support in these settings. That's come out from conversations with those in youth justice settings that we've had, particularly those in the southeast. We understand that there are priorities that enable products and services and interventions, but they need to be adapted. They need to be needs-led. We need to listen to young people about what the needs are and those working in the settings so we can adapt those and make them needs-specific. So we can focus on early intervention, we can help prevent reoffending, and we can ensure that there are long-term outcomes for all of those young people in youth justice settings. Next slide, please. So what was the purpose of this work? I've already said NHS England Health and Justice funded it. We started with our wonderful young people at Peer Power and those working at Peer Power, who you will hear from in a minute, to hear the voices of lived experience, to learn from their experiences about what it means about being neurodivergent in youth offending settings, what helps, what harms, and what must change. I've said too, we talked to those working in youth justice settings to hear about what some of the barriers that they were facing, what some of the needs were from them. And then we started to do a bit of a horizon scan with innovators working in this sector already, and also innovators that could potentially adapt their offer to youth offending settings. So I'm going to hand over to Eleanor, who is going to tell you a little bit about the toolkit, which if you haven't seen already, we will put links in the chat so you can download it after the event. Eleanor, over to you.
Lovely, thank you, Becca. So to follow on from what Becca's already kind of talked about we approach this this work by kind of really identifying what the gaps within the system and within the evidence base around sort of needs-led support for neurodivergent young people in youth offending. We wanted to look at what's really happening there, so what innovation is currently going on and what is the evidence around how effective that is. So we connected with innovators who have experience with youth offending settings, and some of those you'll hear from today. We wanted to really integrate that lived experience insight that Peer Power have shared with us, and we're really grateful for that kind of support and insight, because this really helps us to approach what innovation could look like with a needs-led sort of lens, and making sure that we're informing innovation with what the system really needs, and similarly kind of learning from what people working in those services are experiencing, and some of the challenges and sort of barriers that might be faced in terms of what innovation can look like. And what we really wanted to do was create a practical guidance in the form of a resource, which we're sharing today. So if you haven't had a chance to look at it, the link is currently in the chat, but we'll also share it following the event. So this resource has elements of the sort of evidence base and why there needs to be innovation for neurodivergent young people in youth offending, but also some resources and kind of learning opportunities that innovators and those working within youth offending can take away to kind of think about what might work for them and what might be needed next. As well as this, we've created a checklist to support innovators in this space. So when we were gathering insight from system leads, there was kind of three main areas that really stood out to us. The youth offending leads were understanding that innovation is a real priority for supporting neurodivergent young people. As Peter said, this can be from sort of the screening and assessment phase, but then also thinking about what support is needed after diagnosis, or maybe in the cases where diagnosis isn't accessible for whatever reason due to waiting lists, and kind of thinking about what that support can look like through sort of self-management tools and therapeutic support kind of in the following stages. Also thinking that innovation should be really needs-led, as we've said, so thinking about how what young people have experienced in their kind of early lives and within youth justice settings, how this potential kind of trauma that they might have experienced, how their relationships, as well as needs such as accessibility needs and intersectionality, can really be supported through innovation and design, and how all of these experiences and aspects of young people's lives can inform what innovation can look like. And then thinking about how actually delivering innovation might be quite challenging in this setting. So system leads kind of said that often workforce gaps where there's potentially differences between, some organisations might have different professionals working in it and other places might have a smaller team, and how the sort of disjointed multidisciplinary services might create barriers around accessing support, particularly where it might be looking at management and therapeutic services. So thinking about how these innovations can really be implemented and implemented successfully is kind of a real key area to consider. So we also developed, in conjunction with the kind of learning from listening to young people's experiences and system insight, a set of principles which are highlighted in more detail in the resource. And these principles are sort of underlying kind of features of what innovation for neurodivergent young people in youth justice could look like. So it was quite important that innovation is trauma responsive, so really embedding lived experience as the sort of core of the innovation, and designing innovation that doesn't sort of re-traumatize young people. Innovation should be flexible and adaptable to different settings, so different delivery opportunities, whether that's kind of different types of secure setting or different professionals delivering an innovation, but the outcomes and the sort of impact of those innovations should be sort of consistent regardless of the setting that they're delivered in. We also need to consider inclusive design in our innovation, thinking about different experiences and identities, as well as the sort of systemic disadvantage and inequalities that might have led to the particular experience of that young person, and also different levels of engagement and how different young people engage with different services and kind of innovations. As I said earlier, sometimes diagnosis isn't always possible, or there's very long waiting lists. So a lot of the sort of important innovations for young people can be accessible at any stage, and not necessarily needing a formal clinical diagnosis of a neurodivergent condition. So this can still support young people that might be at different stages of diagnosis. And then thinking about presenting our resource, so it's a practical co-produced resource for innovators, for people working within youth justice and commissioners of services, collating insights from young people, so from peer power, also the insights we got from people working within the system and from the innovators that are working in this setting or exploring these opportunities. And it creates a sort of practical guiding principle and checklist. And there's a QR code there, and we've got the link in the chat. And then following on from this, at the end of the document, there is a checklist which has been designed for innovators when creating innovation for neurodivergent young people in this setting, or adapting their innovation for this setting. What are the considerations that are important in that process? And it's a quick sort of downloadable kind of form that you can go through and kind of tick box as and when you're considering these things. So I think that's all from Becca and I, and I'll go back to Becca to hand over. Thank you.
Thanks, Eleanor, and thank you so much, because you did a huge amount of work on this, and you and Sharon, I'm very appreciate it very much. Next slide, please. So the bit we've all been waiting for. I'm so delighted to hand over to Chloe and Jack from Peer Power, who are going to spend the next 15 minutes talking to us about neurodivergent young people and with lived experience, and how they work with us to help create this resource. Thanks, Chloe and Jack. Over to you guys.
Thanks. Good morning, everyone. As Becca said, you've got myself, Jack, and Chloe from Peer Power Youth. Really pleased to be here this morning. We were due to be presenting alongside two of our young partners, Meg and Marseille, but unfortunately, due to illness, you're stuck with just us. So sorry about that. But we want to talk to you a little bit about this project that we've been working on in partnership with Health Innovation Kent Surrey Sussex and NHS England South East, exploring neurodiversity in the youth justice system and asking a really important question, which is, what does meaningful innovation actually look like for neurodivergent young people? So if we can go to the next slide, before we kick off, we'd like to take a moment just for you to have a look at our Respect Charter. So this is a resource that's co-created by our young people, and we have it at the start of all of our sessions, and we're sharing it with you just to take into consideration when discussing this work and any questions that you might have. And if you do have any questions, please do put them in the chat, and myself and Chloe will take a look and aim to respond to you. So next slide, please. We'll just give you a brief insight into who we are and why we're working on this. So Peer Power Youth is a charity led by empathy, connection, and youth voice. We stand alongside young people and children who've been affected by trauma, including abuse, neglect, exclusion, systemic injustice, and community violence. And many that we work with have spent time in care or the justice system, not by choice, but as a consequence of being failed by society and the systems that are there or meant to be there to protect them. So through the relationships that are rooted in trust and shared experience, we support young people to heal, to grow, and to lead. They tell us what needs to change in mental health, care, justice, and education systems, and then we work with young people and decision makers to make those changes happen. And we challenge services that often re-traumatize the very people they are meant to support, replacing harm with healing and exclusion with empathy. And now I'm going to hand over to my colleague Chloe, who's going to tell you a little bit more about how we do that.
Lovely. Thank you, Jack. And hi, everyone. Very pleased to be here today. Next slide, please, Eleanor. So at Peer Power Youth, we use co-production and relational practice through our empathy-led model, otherwise known as ELM. So if you hear us saying ELM, that's what we're referring to. And a key part of this work was making sure that young people weren't expected to repeatedly retell traumatic personal experiences to be able to contribute to this project. Next slide, please. So instead, when we engaged with young partners, we used a creative co-design method where young partners built composite characters, which was inspired by their real lived experiences. And that was across youth justice, education, care, CAMS waiting lists, police contact, and being in remand and insecure settings as well. Next slide, please. And through those characters, young people were then able to explore what gets misunderstood, what support is missing, what strengths are ignored, and where the system creates harm instead of support. And that process gave us really rich insight into both the barriers and the opportunities for change that we all have here to be able to put forward. And young people also spoke about innovation as being centred around relationships, environments, trust, flexibility, early support and prevention, and systems that actually understand neurodivergence as well. I'm going to hand back over to Jack to do the next slide, please.
Thanks, Chloe. So I'm going to be reading words of one of our young partners, Meg. So it might be difficult looking at me, but just pretend I'm a young person for a minute, and I'll be reading Meg's words about what it feels like to be neurodivergent in the youth justice system. So through the characters we created and the conversations we had together, a lot of common experiences came up around what it can feel like to be neurodivergent in the youth justice system. Young people described feeling misunderstood and labelled before anyone tried to understand what was actually happening underneath their behaviour. A lot of times support came very late after things had already escalated. Young people spoke about long waits for diagnoses, long waits for support, and often feeling punished instead of supported. Another big theme was inconsistency, so support often depended on the individual member of staff rather than the system itself. One trusted adult could make a huge difference, but if that person left or changed, the support often disappeared too. Young people also spoke about strengths being overlooked. Many of the characters we created were creative, resilient, intelligent, sporty or caring, but systems tended to focus more on what was wrong rather than what was strong. And one of the quotes from the sessions really sums that up, that says they see what's wrong before they see what's strong. Next slide, please. So across all of the characters and discussions, several key themes appeared again and again. Young people described behaviours linked to overwhelm, anxiety, or neurodivergence being interpreted as defiance or bad behaviour. A lot of the characters experienced exclusion from school before they had a proper assessment or support, which often increased feelings of isolation and frustration. Young people also talked about stop and search experiences and how repeated police contact can increase distrust in systems and authority figures. Sensory overload came up a lot as well, especially in schools, secure settings, and other environments that felt noisy, bright, unpredictable, or overwhelming. And at the same time, one positive relationship or one trusted adult could completely change a young person's experience. That consistency, patience, and understanding were seen as really important. And again, strengths such as creativity, leadership, humour, sport, and ambition were often ignored or dismissed rather than recognised as protective factors. And this also connects to themes we've heard across all of our other peer power projects as well. The young people have told us that poor mental health can make it harder to maintain healthy routines or coping strategies. And they also recognise that neurodiversity and mental health are linked, but shouldn't automatically be treated as the same thing. Drug and alcohol misuse was often discussed in relation to unmet emotional needs, trauma, and unsupported neurodivergence. And across all of this work, one thing stays consistent: positive relationships and supportive environments improve well-being, increase engagement, and reduce escalation. I'm going to hand back over to Chloe.
Thanks, Jack. And next slide as well, please, Eleanor. Thank you. So the final part of our presentation, we developed with Marseille, who's another young partner that we work with as well. So this section's on what young people said innovation should look like. So there were 4 key areas that we explored in the co-production sessions where young partners were creating their composite characters. And young people were clear that innovation is all about how systems treat people. And one of the biggest themes was relational innovation, so meaning better relationships between young people and professionals. And young people said that they wanted trauma-informed practice, better listening, trust being built before assessments, and genuine youth voice and decisions that directly affect them. And another one of the key areas was on structural innovation. So young people talked about the need for faster and fairer diagnosis pathways, better collaboration and integration between health and justice systems, and more flexible support that responds to the individual needs instead of a one-size-fits-all approach. Another key area was environmental innovation, and that came up as quite a major theme in the co-production sessions. So young people described secure settings, custody suites, and youth justice spaces as sometimes quite overwhelming and overstimulating. So they recommended quiet spaces, sensory adjustments, calm rooms, better lighting, clearer signage, and areas for more privacy as well. And then finally, the final key area was around strengths-based innovation. So young people want systems to focus more on strengths and talents instead of being heavily focused on risk aversion and behaviour. They spoke about sports, creativity, music, life skills, particularly life skills on being reintegrated into the community, perhaps after being in remand and custody or sentenced into a secure setting. And also young people said that recognising young people's talents as assets rather than distractions was a key part of this. Next slide, please. So we asked young people what the word innovation means to them, and they designed this word cloud. So young people described innovation as creative, futuristic, and needed, but at the same time, they also described it as complicated, sometimes lack of understanding of what people's interpretation of innovation is can make it feel quite scary or anxiety-inducing. And in many ways, especially with the rise in AI, young partners spoke about certain perceptions of innovation risking losing humanity. And that was a really important message from the session. So young people didn't want innovation that replaces relationships or some sort of human connection. What they wanted was innovation that helps people feel more understood, more supported, and more included. So for young people, innovation, it still needs to feel human, relational, and most importantly, accessible. Next slide, please. So when it came to co-creating some recommendations to leaders and decision makers, and when we say leaders and decision makers, this could be someone in a management role, perhaps in the service, or an operational kind of lead in a service or organisation as well as commissioners and local MPs, councillors. So young people were very clear that meaningful change is possible, but it does require systems to work differently. And some of the key recommendations that they co-created were mandatory neurodiversity and trauma-informed training, earlier identification and support, so prevention came up as quite a key theme in these sessions, sensory friendly environments, and more consistent trusted adults around young people. And young people also said that support shouldn't depend on having a formal diagnosis first. We know that many young people are waiting years for assessments while their needs are already affecting schools, relationships and well-being, which could be a contributing factor to young people ending up in the youth justice system. And another major recommendation was embedding youth voice directly into service design and commissioning, rather than asking for feedback or consultation after a decision's already been made. So young people also highlighted the importance of anti-racist and equity-informed practice, recognising that all race, class, care experience and neurodivergence can all shape how young people are treated within systems. And there's a final message that young people put together that they wanted you all to hear. And that is that we want a youth justice system built around independence, patience and strengths, being less politically driven and more youth-centred. Next slide, please, Eleanor. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to Jack and I. Meg and Marcy will be recording a kind of snippet presentation, which we hope to share with you all soon. If you want to find out more about us, you can scan the QR code or head to www.peerpower.org.uk. We also provide training and like co-produce project opportunities. If you're interested in knowing more about that, you can contact us at training@peerpower.org.uk. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Chloe and Jack. You just en masse and Meg, we really appreciate your input into this. I think you just reiterate the need for co-production through empathy, which you do with Bells On, and the motto of focus what, not focusing what is wrong, but before what is strong is something that will resonate with me. I'm really sorry we can't take any questions during the webinar. For the person that's got their hand up, please do put it in the chat. If it's for any of us, we will answer during the session, and if not, afterwards, and share the answers with you. But once again, I mean, you could see the love and the claps, the applause for your presentation. Thank you very much, guys, really appreciate it. So it's our chance to hear from 4 innovators. We've got 10 minutes each, and Sharon has a little timer that will go on. We're delighted that you could join us today to showcase some of the work you're already doing in youth justice settings. It's my pleasure to introduce Alec and Penny from QB Tech and Angus from Wetherby. So over to you, colleagues from Wetherby and QB Tech.
Thanks, Becca. Excellent. So I'm going to talk a little bit about QB Tech and our platforms and what they do, and then I'm going to be passing over to Angus Wright to share his experiences of using some objective testing in his service, before then handing over to Penny, one of our clinical advisors here, to share some additional feedback we've had from Barton Moss Secure Children's Home. Could we go to the next slide, please? Fantastic, great. So we provide QB Test and QB Check. These are objective tests used to help rule in or rule out ADHD as part of an assessment process. They are CE marked, FDA cleared. They're a type 1A medical device. They can also be used in the treatment arm of a pathway. So we can look at whether there's been any kind of treatment response and to what degree that treatment response may have been. And we do this by analysing the 3 core domains of ADHD. So we look at impulsivity, inattention, and hyperactivity. And then we compare that patient to a norm group of the same biological sex and age match to see what kind of impairments there are compared to that group. We have been working with the NHS for a while now. We were part of a national programme. This is how I originally met Becca. And the objective of that was to put objective testing into children's services. It ran for about 3 years. And after that, we eventually got some nice recommendations to use QB test in 6 to 17-year-olds as part of an assessment. So we have quite a good support for our technology within Pathways. Could you please go to the next slide? I wanted to share a little bit about what our products look like, how, what the test is, what the reports are. So just to give you a bit of an overview, we have 2 tests, one for a younger group, which is 15 minutes, and one for an older group, which is 20 minutes. The younger group task is a go, no go. They respond or they inhibit a response, depending on a symbol on the screen. And the older task is to respond to a symbol that repeats in shape and colour when it appears. These tests are somewhat mundane, and they're designed that way because we want to evaluate whether someone's attention can be maintained and how accurate they'll be throughout that task whilst they are being monitored for their movements. There will be an administrator in the room that fills out an observation form. It's important to say that our objective tests are part of a holistic approach for assessments. They're not to be used in a standalone, alongside rating scales, clinical interviews. So an observation during these tests is really important to provide some context for the interpretation of the report. You may see particular sort of outcomes, and you just might want to look back to that observation to see what was happening in the room at the time. Could we go to the next slide, please? Great. This is one of our reports. This is a QB check report. It's quite visual, and it's broken down into 4 areas. Essentially, in the top right-hand corner, we have the cardinal parameters, which we are comparing to that norm group population, and essentially giving a score of how they've done and whether there's been an impairment in that performance. We then provide a visual view perspective on that, which is in the bottom left, which is broken down into both activity and then impulse and attention control. We break them down into quarters so we can see change over time for the hyperactivity, and for the impulse and control, we look at correct responses, incorrect responses, missed responses, and to the degree and speed at which they're responding and the variation between that. Typically with ADHD, we're looking at impairment over time, and then in the bottom right we compare to the norm group comparative group to show what it would look like for someone doing this test without ADHD. This can be really, really useful, especially when delivering outcomes or looking at treatment response to share with the patient. It's very visual and very, very useful. Top left is symptom scores compared to a general population, just looking at the severity of symptomology in the patient and the likelihood of ADHD-like symptoms. So that hopefully gives you a bit of a brief overview of what our technology is doing, but it's there just to support understanding the symptomology with patients so that we can get to more accurate conclusions and more robust processes. But I'm going to hand off to Angus, who I'll let introduce himself to give you his experiences of using our platforms within his service.
Okay, thank you, Alec. Hi, everyone. So my name's Angus Wright. I'm a learning disability nurse, and I work at Wetherby Young Offenders, but Wetherby in Yorkshire, one of the 3 young offenders in the country. I'm the neurodevelopmental pathway lead, and we oversee a lot of the neuro assessments, including learning disabilities, autism, and predominantly we found ADHD. Could I have the next slide, please? Thank you very much. So obviously with QB Tech, we brought in to support us with the ADHD diagnoses. We have found that a lot of the children that we have coming through, nearly 60% of children have a diagnosis of ADHD, which is probably significantly higher than within the general population. They do sort of the assessments that we have been doing include the Connors, observations. We have a psychiatry and psychology, and we look at children within the education settings. Obviously, within the young offenders, we're quite restricted in what we get there. So the Connors isn't necessarily adapted to that environment. The observations that we see with teachers aren't exactly the best that we could get like you would in a school. And so when we come to making assessments and decisions over it, we are also caught with the information we've got against the backgrounds of trauma, which a lot of the children do have, as discussed earlier. And this makes diagnosis a little bit difficult sometimes, a bit of guesswork, a lot of good clinical judgment. But to get the best bet and to get the best of the diagnosis, we found that QB testing adds that extra bit on top, which can sway a decision from this might be ADHD. There's a lot of trauma to actually this is more likely to be ADHD with the diagnosis outcomes that we get from the QB test. The challenges that we do find, I suppose, is within the environment. We do need a nice sort of quiet, unstimulating clinical space to get the best out of the QB tech testing. We've had to work with the governors and within the prison to get that environment correct. And also it's access to the children. They have quite strict, rigid routines, etc. within. So finding space to do that. And we're working consistently with the governors and within the prison to get that space and to save that space. That they wanted the children to have the right diagnosis as much as we are and as much as the children are as well. More collaboration, working together, we sort of moving in the right direction with that. Things that we found, it's a pretty easy test to set up. We set up with a computer, sat the child in front of it, half an hour or so we sort of completed. What we found with the children, it is boring, is their words. The feedback, it's boring, it's quite difficult to concentrate for that amount of time, and I think I suppose with someone with ADHD they may find that, but also we found that afterwards it helps us to have a little bit of connection with the kid afterwards to talk about how they're feeling. They can be quite a couple of young people have been quite stressed afterwards and find it quite difficult, and we've found that having a little bit of time afterwards just to sort of reconnect with them before they return back to the wings and their routines has been quite helpful. And more as importantly, before the session starts, we have an honest talk with them to explain exactly what it is. There's some good information there, a nice easy flow chart to show what it does and what we're aiming to do, and so they've got clear expectations of what the assessment is going to be about. And again, we've got to just be very aware of that the children that we experience as well, and this probably opens more lines to more into more research possibly into young children with ADHD, etc. within the youth justice system and YOIs about the assessment tools that we're using, because they're not specifically designed for the population of children we have, quite complex children with ADHD. So the Connors we've talked about is not necessarily designed for this environment, and then the assessments that we're doing, we're comparing to normative models within peer models within the community. Again, it's something that we can work with the guys at QB to look at how and feedback how this may be different to the children in our group. Okay, so time's up.
Thanks.
There's one more slide. I can go through it really quickly.
Sorry about that. I do apologise.
Are we allowed one more minute?
Please do.
Thank you so much. There's another secure children's home, Barton Moss and Marydale, and just think these quotes, which why I wanted to put them in, are really important. These come from the actual young people who are using the QB test in their environment. And thank you, Angus, for sort of explaining how it works over your way. So you can read them, but I think we just highlighted there, so the medication is working then. This is really supporting the young people in understanding the medication, what the medication they're taking is doing for them. Young people at Barton Moss have generally highlighted feeling more involved in their ADHD assessments. I think this has been something that has been highlighted by the Peer Power youth, that they do want to be involved in their care and their assessments. QB test is QB check is not only about supporting ADHD diagnosis, but actually retracting that. A lot of these young people will come already diagnosed with ADHD, and it might not be that they do have ADHD, and they may have been taking medication for a long time, which may actually make them feel worse than better. So ADHD diagnosis can be retracted as well by looking at those QB tests, QB check reports. Young people have been generally interested in the results in QB tests. As you can see, it's a very visual report you get. And again, we've seen that these young people do have a higher level of learning need. So to look at something visually is often really helpful and sort of informing for how they, their behaviours and what their lived experience. And finally, we've been using it to support discussions around medication. Some young people may not be aware of medication having an effect on them. That discussion may never have taken place. And we know that a lot of young people don't want to take medication because it makes them feel not like their peers, or it makes them feel unwell. So showing them that QB test results gives that objective evidence of improvements, rather than residential or educational staff opinion, which can be subject to bias. And that's another thing that has been brought up in your innovation as well. So I think those quotes are really valuable, and thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Angus, Penny and Alec. I've been working with QB for a while, and it's really great to see this actively embedded within youth offending settings, youth justice settings, and really great, Angus, to hear from you as a clinician working in this space, how you can actively use it. So thank you very much. You did benefit from a few minutes because Peer Power finished early. So, but it's really important to hear from those Barton Moss and Marydale too. I've had the privilege of speaking with them, and I know that they're actively using your product. So thank you very, very much for your time. Any questions, please put them in the chat for the team at QB and Angus himself. Next slide, please, Eleanor. And it's now my opportunity to introduce XR Therapeutics and Penny, who is the Chief Operating Officer. Penny, over to you.
Thank you. Hi everyone, I'm Penny and COO at XR Therapeutics, and thank you for having me today. Can I have the first slide, please? Thank you. At XRT, we develop digital mental health tools that help mental health professionals work more effectively with people experiencing anxiety, trauma, phobias, and other complex emotional behavioural needs. Today, I want to give you a quick overview of what we do and why we think our approach has real relevance in youth justice settings, and show you a little bit about how digital environments can support engagement and therapeutic work, and particularly when thinking about where traditional approaches can sometimes struggle. Next slide, please. At its core, our mission is pretty simple. To improve access to effective mental health support and give staff another tool to engage young people in a way that feels more practical and meaningful. We use realistic digital environments to support practitioner-led interventions. So rather than only talking about a difficult situation, young people can explore it in a safe, supported way alongside a professional. This could be in a school environment for school avoidance, a cafe for social anxiety, or even a job interview to build confidence and life skills. What's really important for us is that this is practitioner-led. The technology does not replace human support, and the professional will stay fully controlled throughout the whole experience. We think that this has particular relevance in youth justice settings where trust, engagement, and emotional expression can sometimes be a bit harder to achieve. For young people who've experienced trauma, anxiety, or emotional dysregulation, or are neurodivergent, talking alone can often feel quite overwhelming or quite abstract. So this really offers something a bit more visual and practical, and hopefully easier to connect with. Next slide, please. So it's just a little video to show you a bit more about the technology. So this is our Boundless platform. So this is where practitioners can log into their dashboard and they can see all of our different environments that are kind of split into relaxation environments and treatment or functional skills. And this is for our virtual approach when you're doing remote treatment. So as you can see, this isn't really a traditional XR platform. We build the technology to be suitable across a wide range of devices such as phones, tablets, laptops, computers, or television screens. And if you're doing a remote session, this is what that will look like. So as you can see, it's kind of similar to a Teams call where you can see one another, and this is the practitioner view where you've got buttons and you can basically explore the environments in front of you, whether that's relaxation or kind of these general environments. And as you can see, you can kind of increase the sound or increase the kind of movement and people within those environments. Now, this is the kind of hardware we use when we're working traditionally with kind of probation or prison services. So this is normally through televisions. As you can see, there can be a practitioner and an individual sat next to one another, and they're both going through these environments together. And the practitioner has complete control using a tablet device. And they can also make their own mobile phone the control if the tablet device isn't something that they're able to use at that time. This is just another example of one of the environments we've built. So this was actually built with an NHS trust who wanted to look at generalised anxiety disorder and particularly looking at areas of uncertainty. But we found within this scene that we can kind of use this to be across kind of functional skills and other areas as well. And as you can see, it'd be used on a smaller screen as well. So this is kind of used within a computer screen and again, can be completely controlled. So as you could have seen on there, you can see on the screen that you can change the bus time, so they could be on time, they could be late, they could be completely cancelled. You can then explore things like paying with your card. At one time it might be accepted, the next it might be declined. And also within these environments, you can start experiencing kind of those interactions with the characters as well. So you might be able to speak to the bus driver, they might be rude to you, they might be polite to you. Basically practicing and being able to explore all of those different types of uncertainties and different ways that this situation could play out, but in a safe and controlled environment with a practitioner with them. We also find this really helps speed up discovery work as well. So it really helps practitioners to understand what in that situation is making someone feel anxious or uncomfortable. As you can see, you can change things like how busy it seems, so it can feel more claustrophobic. And alongside this, obviously, you can hear me talking over it, but actually there's a lot of noises that we bring into this as well. So people chattering and the sound of the bus and all of that can be increased and decreased throughout the experience. This is an example of our courtroom scene. So as you can see, within this environment, you can change the very intricate things such as the police uniform. You can bring in witnesses, the defence. And you can also play a different part in this environment as well. You could be the survivor, you could be a witness, or you could be someone that is going through this process within a court setting. And this has been used across different services that we've worked with. This is our mobile app. So this is something we're really proud of, and it's something that's actually available for free for anyone to download at the moment. This is available on Android devices and Apple devices. This was actually co-designed and co-developed with autistic people and people with learning disabilities. So we built this mobile app as a way to make our support more accessible. So people can essentially use this in between sessions and kind of when they're dealing with those kind of in real life experiences. Within this, they have all their relaxation scenes, muscle relaxation techniques, other activities such as ball popping, and it's just really used to kind of reduce anxiety when people are in the real world. Next slide, please. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea of how the platform works in practice. But for us, the biggest question has always been, does this actually improve engagement and outcomes? And what we've seen is that this can really help young people engage in conversations that might otherwise feel quite difficult or overwhelming. In some services, interventions that might traditionally take 8 to 12 sessions have been reduced to about 3 to 4 sessions, really helping people to access support quicker. We've also seen really positive health economic outcomes as well, with one of our independent reports from Cheetah estimating savings of around £21,000 per 100 service users treated. But as someone that is neurodivergent, the biggest thing for me is engagement, because if a young person doesn't engage, even the best intervention won't work. Next slide, please. We still have further to go, but this approach was built by Newcastle University and the NHS through a decade of clinical research. Along the way, we've also been really proud to be recognised in the NHS 10-year plan to become the first mental health XR company commissioned by an ICB, and we're also the first to join the NHS Innovation Accelerator as well. We're currently working across 6 different NHS trusts and ICBs. This is across neurodiversity pathways, children and young people services, CAMS, and secure and justice settings. Unfortunately, the practitioners using this were unable to attend today, but one of our examples where this technology is working is at the Primrose unit in HMP Low Newton, which is a Category A women's prison. And this is where we've been using it to support women around anxiety and emotional regulation and understanding what a safe space feels like. Before building anything, we spent a lot of time with their team, understanding the challenges that they were seeing on a day-to-day basis. A big theme was anxiety around social situations in prisons, particularly around kind of group work or unexpected encounters with other prisoners, as well as difficulties around relaxation. For some women, the idea of a safe space really felt completely unfamiliar. So we've recreated parts of that prison environment where social interactions were frequent, and we've also built calming and relaxation scenes to support with all of this. This is all actually delivered through a bespoke build using a television that's already available on site. And as we know, it would have been kind of really difficult for us to connect via Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. This has been developed to run completely offline, so it doesn't need connection to the internet at all. We also work with Cumbria, Northumberland, Tyne and Wear NHS Foundation Trust Probation Service. This is supporting people adjusting to life after custody. And managing anxiety around reintegration. So following some more discovery sessions, we've built bespoke environments with them, including an approved premises in Newcastle, alongside everyday situations such as getting the bus, helping people to really gradually build their confidence before facing situations in real life. A big part of how we work is co-design. So we work really closely with clinicians, operational teams, and service users to build what really genuinely can work in practice. And we've been really fortunate to receive a lot of support from organisations like Innovate UK and IHR and SBRI Healthcare, helping us to continue developing the technology in new areas, including psychosis, learning disabilities, addiction, and self-harm prevention as well. Next slide, please. I just wanted to finish off by sharing a few reflections. This is from practitioners and from service users. I think one of the comments for me that always really sticks out to me is from therapists who said that a young person was really willing to engage for longer than they normally would in therapy because the experience felt much easier to connect with and much more accessible. And ultimately, this is what this is about. It's not technology for technology's sake. It's about giving professionals an evidence-informed tool to better support young people, particularly for those that might struggle to engage. Thank you for listening, and I'm very happy to answer any of your questions, just in the nick of time.
Oh, Penny, thank you so much. Timing perfect. There's lots of questions in the chat for you. Does anyone else love the idea of that bubble wrap, or is it just me? I will be seeking that out. Lovely to hear from XR Therapeutics as ever. Fantastic to hear about the work that you're already doing within probation and prison settings, but I'm really interested to hear about how that could be extended to young people in within youth offending teams and secure young people secure settings. So great opportunities there with that with XR Therapeutics. Thank you. I'll leave you to answer all your questions in the chat, Penny. Next slide, please, Eleanor. It's my great pleasure to introduce our third innovator, Helios. Matt, I'm going to hand over to you and Rebecca to hear all about the work you're doing in youth justice settings. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Rebecca.
Thanks, Becca. Much appreciated. And so, hi, I'm Matt. I'm divisional director for the NHS at Helios. I'm not a clinician, but my background's in teaching in the voluntary sector. I spent a long time at Young Minds, For the last decade or so, I've been working with organisations that blend tech and human support, and that's what Helios is really about. So we work primarily with the NHS and other organisations supporting children and young people with neurodevelopmental conditions and mental health problems. And our focus is helping young people to identify and overcome the barriers that they face so they can lead the best possible lives they can. We're a fully remote organisation. We've got large clinical teams spread across England, Wales, Scotland and Ireland. And my colleague Rebecca is going to talk more about our clinical offer in a moment. But I just wanted to give you a quick flavour of who we are before we get into the data. Could we do the next slide if possible, please? Actually, the next one after that. Thanks. Cheers, brilliant. So we've got one of the largest virtual clinical teams outside of the NHS in the UK. We've supported thousands of clients on behalf of the NHS. We've worked with around 60% of NHS trusts in the UK. Usually it's about offering support for people as quickly as possible for the group that we work with, and our waits are really pretty short because of the size of the team, approximately 6 weeks. The team includes psychologists, psychiatrists, paediatricians, therapists, speech and language therapists, OTs. It's a genuine MDT, all professionally registered in DBS checked. So our clinicians are really experienced working with children and young people. Before they came to Helios, most of our clinical team were working within CAM services wherever they were based, and they're now since working for us, experts in delivering the same sorts of assessments and support you'd expect within a CAM service, but they're delivering it virtually, and we've got a really good system that enables them to do that. We've also got a dedicated safeguarding team because many of the young people we work with have very complex lives, need more than just a clinical intervention. We do lots of work with MASH teams, schools, yachts, lots of other people locally. Can you do next slide, please? So the project I wanted to highlight today is most relevant to the room, though there is a significant overlap in all of the work that we do, referencing Becca's figures from earlier on. Rebecca and I were talking this morning. We've got a referral, for example, for a young person that came via an MHST project that we're working on. That young person's issues around substance misuse and offending behaviour, we're supporting them, and that's not a specific yacht project, but about 4 years ago, we were commissioned by the yacht in Norfolk, and the data here covers that project, and I think Rebecca's going to build on that as well. But as part of that specific project, we took 125 referrals. Across those referrals, those 125, we created about 193 services because many of the young people that we worked with needed more than one type of support. What we provided was 107 mental health assessments, 35 goal-based interventions, 24 ADHD assessments, 10 autism assessments. We do combined assessments as well. I don't think we did any as part of this, but we usually would have done. CBT, post-diagnostic support. These young people often came in presenting with one thing, but actually needed quite a lot of support, and we were able to match a clinician who could support their needs to that young person and give them the support that they needed, the therapeutic modality that worked for them, or the assessment that they needed to uncover what their needs were. So a couple of findings I think really worth flagging. The ADHD diagnostic rate was 100%. Every young person who came through for an ADHD assessment received a diagnosis, and that's well above the 84-85% that we typically see across our other work, and that's kind of consistent with NHS diagnostic rates. I think speaks to something we probably know: this population is significantly under-identified. They've been often been in our system for years before anyone's properly looked at what's driving their behaviour. In terms of satisfaction, clients and their families rated us really, really highly. For young people who are often disengaged with services, that's something that we're really, really proud of. I think it was clear that people did want to engage with a virtual offer. And I think that was about the clinicians. That was, we were able to link them with an actual person who was able to meet their needs and deliver some really well needed therapy or an assessment to them. Okay, I'll hand over to my colleague Rebecca now.
Thanks, Matt. Hi, everyone. I'm Rebecca Kinnear. I'm the clinical lead for the treatment services at Helios. Next slide, please. Thanks, Eleanor. So many of us here know, and we've heard it in different ways, that when it comes to young people engaged with youth justice systems, those traditional clinic-based models can fall flat and fail before the first session even happens. And that can be for a number of reasons: stigma, a lack of transport, previous negative experiences with authority. All of these different barriers can make it really hard for young people to access the support that they need. And again, as we've heard, these young people face disproportionately higher rates of neurodevelopmental needs, mental health needs, and complex trauma. So at Helios, we were really interested to think, how can we support these young people in a meaningful and collaborative way? And that wasn't just about digitising our existing therapy and support platform, but to consider a digital clinical pathway that thinks about the unique needs of these young people. We know that digital interventions can perfectly align with adolescents' developmentally characteristics and their digital lifestyles, but as we've heard throughout all of the speakers so far, that only works if we design them intentionally and collaboratively. So our project focused on a simple philosophy: meeting young people exactly where they are, and practically speaking, for a lot of these young people, it's on their phones. So for a cohort that feel sometimes scrutinised or misunderstood by authority, walking into a physical clinic can feel quite threatening. Shifting that into an online platform, we alter that power dynamic. We start to reduce the power imbalance between the practitioner and the young person. We give them the agency, the choice, and the control over their environment. They can choose where to access the service from, providing that it's private and safe and appropriate. And our measures do the talking. So we at Helios like to focus on goal-based outcomes, as well as some of the other standardised outcome measures. But the goals are very often the most meaningful to that individual. They're things that they have identified themselves. 90% of the young people who accessed our support made clinically reliable improvements within their goals. So that tells us that they benefited from the support offered to them, and they were able to move and progress towards the thing that mattered most to them. I think what really made our pathway work was its flexibility. So all of our services sit directly at that interface between neurodiversity and mental health. We know that those waiting lists for formal assessments are very lengthy, that needs can go unmet, and at Helios, young people do not need a formal diagnosis to access our support. We offer pre-assessment support and post-assessment rather than post-diagnostic support. Our clinicians are empowered to adapt to the person in front of them, even in the moment, to offer needs-led, evidence-based and trauma-informed support. So what that looked like for the young people in this project was altering our pacing, accommodating different processing needs, as Becca was saying earlier, and different trauma responses, flexing our appointment timings to fit busy, ever-changing schedules and chaotic environments, and working intentionally harder to establish trust and rapport through a screen. We know that that relationship is even more important for these young people. But crucially, putting the support directly onto their phones unlocked a level of continuity of care that face-to-face services can struggle to achieve. They were no longer reliant on a parent, caregiver or support worker to transport them to an appointment, and if their living situation changed or their week was chaotic, the clinic could travel with them on their phone. So we believe that this needs-led approach offered a shift in perspective, and that embracing that digital-first support removed the external demands for some of these young people and allowed us to deliver the care that they needed. Thank you very much. Happy to answer any questions in the chat as well. And I think we're just on time.
Well done. For anyone, for the audience, I put a strict time constraint on everybody, so everyone's kind of really concerned about going over time. So apologies for forcing that. That's on everyone. Thank you so much, Rebecca and Matt and colleagues from Helios. I think the key thing that resonates for me is meeting young people where they are, where they're at, and I think that just resonates on the work that kind of the peer power, the words that peer power shared with us earlier on in the session. So it's great to hear how Helios products can do that. So thank you guys, and I'll leave you to answer some of the questions in the chat. Thank you both. Next slide, please, Eleanor. So it's with great pleasure to introduce Professor Amanda Kirby, who is the founder of Do It Solutions. Amanda, over to you.
Thank you very much. And I think everybody's done an amazing job to keep to 10 minutes, so I'm going to try my best to do so. So I've been working in the field of neurodiversity, neurodivergence for nearly 40 years, and in the justice system for 20 plus years. And we've developed tools to identify, it follows on very well from what was just being said before, about understanding the actual individual and understanding the individual's needs. First slide, please. What we do is we have developed technical systems which are usable, translatable, accessible, and they're being used in justice systems, the NHS, they're used in alternative provision. We've used them practically with parents, within young people, and widespread in the justice system, which I'll tell you as well. They're built on 20 years of transdisciplinary justice research as well. We're really keen to say, how do we learn about the needs of individuals? How are we going to understand and feed that back so the people working with those individuals understands their complexity? And that's what we've shown when we publish data as well. So we publish the data where appropriate and possible for learning for all of us, really. And it goes into the beginning of this talk, the first thing this morning, about the complexity of the children that are coming through the youth offending systems as well, is that many of them don't just have ADHD, autism, they do have, as highlighted, speech language impairments as well at a very high rate, but they also have high levels of traumatic brain injury. We've screened about 1,000 children in alternative provision, and in those children we saw very high rates of TBI, but also we've seen in prisons and justice and youth offending this additive effect of having neurodivergent traits plus adversity. People talked about trauma and adversity, and what we can see when we collect the data using Profiler, a stacked model of 1 and 1 equals 3, but recognizing the variability of that nature. Now, Profiler sits on a management platform. It's a bit like Lego bricks. They're accessible, they're translatable, they're scalable, and they are needs-led and strengths-based, which is really important. So we highlight and identify the strengths of that young person or individual, and we've got tools that we've been using in schools, NHS providers use us as well. So we've got appropriate, age-appropriate tools for the different ages of individuals and the different context. And practical guidance is demonstrated and provided with the response. And it can lead to that filter we've heard from Hubitex. It can lead to, do we need to go further down that? Or do we need the clinical support? So the people I've heard from this morning is like, we're a family, we can work together in a lot of ways. There isn't one solution. It provides practical tools so that the staff know how to support that young person, but also the young person understands their strengths and their challenges, and they can have a better, more informed conversation. It is scalable. We're used in every prison now in the UK, in England and Wales. We've been used in Scotland as well. So we know that we can deliver this at scale. Can you do the next slide, please? So we've had a lot of experience working in digital systems, and during this time over the 20 years, Profile hasn't stood still. We've developed it further so that we get this evaluation back from the individuals who are working with it, whether it's young people, whether it's parents, whether it's teachers, in terms of the context as well. And then we evolve it, we co-produce it with clinical teams as well. So can you move on to the next slide? So it's been used widely and is being used widely by ICBs, by NHS trusts, and as I said, in the justice setting as well. Now, it's also, very importantly, translatable and accessible. Many of the young people who are engaging and staff might be neurodivergent as well. English might not be their first language. We've seen the high level of speech and language problems we've got as well. So accessibility and translatability is really important. So how it's developed and delivered is really the length of the modules, the accessibility, the guidance, so we get good engagement. And again, we've used this at all ages and stages. Next slide, please. So the tool takes, as I said, a needs-led, strengths-based. It generates straight away a picture of that individual's. I think somebody's not on mute. If you can go on mute, if that's possible. A needs-led approach. So it generates straight away a picture of strengths and challenges. You can click on those straight away and it provides you with resources and then more practical information. So it means that individuals, the teacher or the person working with that individual, can have a better, more informed conversation. And it can aid targeting for group interventions. So if you're screening a group of individuals, you can see what the patterns are. So you can see we've got 3 people where time management might be difficult, or speaking and communicating. So you can target those interventions very effectively. Next slide, please. So what it allows, Profiler sits on a platform, and in a youth offending, in a youth situation or in any setting, you decide the hierarchy of access, and that means you can see group individual and group information, individual information, and you can see single responses as well. And it means that you can actually look at what's going on in your organisation very effectively and be able to measure interventions very clearly. We've just been looking at 300 young people who've been using Profiler very effectively and looking at their outcomes, and we're just going to publish this work as well. And 44% of those children had more than one neurodivergent pattern. One of the things we're picking up when we're screening individuals is that they don't fit in these classical patterns. And so when you're looking at needs, we need to look at the overall needs, and you can see these are additive. And what we can see that in one group, that the more balls in the bucket they had, not the colour of, I use this analogy of balls in the bucket, which is you might have red ones for ADHD and blue ones for autism. It's not the colour of them, it's often the number of them they've got. And we've seen this in young people, in male offending, female offending, and in adult populations now, the similar pattern. I put some links to the research that we've found. This is really important because we're now looking at outcomes as well, and we're measuring outcomes where we can see the relationship of the number of balls in the bucket increases the risk of things like self-harm as well. So really important, we're thinking across neurodisabilities and neurodivergent traits and not just in silos as well. And we take a needs-led approach, and that's what Profiler does, allows you to do it. So personalisation, you can have triaging, so you can see, do you need to filter down and go more and have a look more in depth? ADHD, autism assessment, you're able to do that instantly. You don't need much training to get up and running and use it. And you can see that because we've rolled it out across the prison sector. We've rolled it out in one ICB recently. We've screened 15,000 people very effectively, getting evaluation from them. So we're learning what they like, what they don't. We can develop more materials in collaboration with them as well. It's not a once and done. This is an ongoing product. And then for those individuals, those young people who are moving from school into training, we then have further modules that allow you to do things like preparation for transition and thinking about readiness for education and employment, further education and employment. There are mental health modules in there as well to look at how that young person feels, acts, that can feed into further assistance as well, and targeting that. We're able to do data integration, and we can do resource targeting. So one of the things we do in some areas is make it local. So if you've got children in a local area, you might want to target resources to what's actually existing, and we can do those data linkages very easily with you and really practically make it more personal to the setting and the context. Next slide, please. So the key facts are that it's easy to implement. We've done it at scale. We can modify it to make sure that it's effective locally and the context is appropriate. We've heard already from people this morning that the setting you're putting young people in, you're going to have constraints about what you can and can't do, and we can adapt the guidance according to the environment as well very easily. Staff don't have to do scoring, so it's easier to do, and there's very little training required. We have videos throughout to make it very easy, and we're very practiced on delivering this in a secure environment. We have Cyber Essentials Plus and ISO, and we've also got, we work in the NHS and we work in the MOD as well. So we're used to very secure environments and understanding the needs. But for most of all, for me, it's really ensuring this is an accessible, translatable, personalised, needs-led, strengths-based starting point for a better conversation. And if you have any questions, please do contact me.
Amanda, exactly 10 minutes. Fantastic. Thank you very, very much to cram all of that in such a short space of time. Great to hear about the focus on accessibility and translatability, and hear about the benefits to the workforce, and really highlighting that needs-led personalised approach. That's come through. So thank you for that. Much appreciated. And please again answer on any of the questions in the chat, and share any research or information through that so we can get that out to everybody. Thank you. Thanks, Amanda. Eleanor, it's my great opportunity now to introduce two innovators. Unfortunately, the third innovation, which from speech and language link, couldn't join us, but their details are available in the toolkit for those here with interest in SALT. But it's my great opportunity to introduce two last innovators. We've asked them to do an elevator pitch rather than 10 minutes, just a couple of minutes to present their innovation. They're not currently working necessarily in youth offending settings, but could be adapted. So I'm going to first of all introduce you. Next slide, please, Eleanor. Drum roll. Drum roll. I'm going to introduce you to Tom. Tom is CEO of Think Divergent. So over to you for your elevator pitch, please. And if you could move on to the next slide, please, Eleanor. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Becca. So hi everyone, I'm Tom King. I'm CEO of Think Divergent, and I'm an ADHDer. I'm one of the lucky ones. I had good scaffolding and support, and I went down the entrepreneurship pathway, as so many ADHDers do. But with my impulsivity and risk taking, I could easily, and at times perhaps should, have been one of the young people we're here to help today. Think Divergent's neurodevelopmental operating system, or NDOS, gives services a neuro-inclusive way to understand and support young people. It supports the full neurodevelopmental pathway end to end, lifting quality and productivity at every step. At South London and Maudsley Foundation Trust, for example, it's reduced time on the pathway from 232 days to 69. So how does that relate to youth justice? Well, in the youth justice settings, it can be used in two ways. In youth justice adjacent services like youth offending teams and diversion programs, the starting point is the strengths and needs profile, the holistic functioning profile. An evidence-led, inclusive and strengths-based tool that identifies a young person's communication, sensory and executive functioning needs, their environmental triggers, and recommends personalised reasonable adjustments that can reduce conflict, escalation and risk. This shifts practice from reactive behaviour management to understanding young people in context, and gives justice, education and health a shared framework for coordinated planning. It works pre-diagnosis or alongside an existing one. The wider NDOS platform can also be adapted for secure settings, particularly at intake, to enable the workforce, improve assessment quality and productivity, and support safer, more consistent decisions. Chloe earlier introduced the 4 key areas young people said innovation should look like. It should be trauma-informed, it should involve sensory adjustments, it should deliver faster and fairer diagnostic pathways, and it should be strengths-based. NDOS delivers on all 4 key areas. My details are on the slide if you'd like to connect. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Tom. That's really great. If you want to put your details in the chat as well for that, as we move on to the next slide. Thanks for sharing with us the work that Think neurodivergent does. Really appreciate it. I'm going to hand over now to Dr. Julian, who is going to present on Dr. Julian. I'm hoping he's here. He's a GP and was in surgery about an hour ago, so I'm hoping he's able to join us and hasn't been.
I'm here. Hi, Becca.
Oh, brilliant, Julian. Julian, if you'd like to come on camera, and Eleanor will share the next slide.
Brilliant. Thank you. So yeah, I'm Dr. Julian Nesbitt, founder of Dr. Julian Medical Group. We're a CQC registered national mental health provider and digital platform supporting ADHD and wider mental health and neurodiversity pathways across NHS services. One of the challenges increasingly recognised across youth justice settings is that many young people with ADHD or wider neurodevelopmental difficulties are identified late or spend long periods waiting for meaningful support. During that time, difficulties around emotional regulation, impulsivity, engagement, education, and mental health can continue to escalate. Our model is designed to act as a digital front door and waiting list support tool, helping to provide earlier support before escalation into specialist services where appropriate. Importantly, our focus is not only on assessment pathways, but also on providing structured support and self-management tools earlier in the pathway. This includes affordable ADHD pre-screen consultations, helping identify whether a specialist assessment may be needed, while also giving earlier guidance and support. Alongside this, the platform includes a personalised digital dashboards and a resource library, giving young people access to educational materials, therapeutic tools, and structured self-management support tailored to their individual needs. And importantly, the platform is designed to work alongside existing youth justice practitioners and support workers, helping support engagement through structured tools, resources, and guidance that complement the trusted relationships already in place. Through our healthcare resource builder, services can also create localized digital pathways and resource libraries themselves to support wider self-management and social prescribing, alongside access to specialist clinical advice and escalation support from the Dr. Julian team where required. Where clinically indicated, individuals can then be escalated to evidence-based therapy that we provide, or full CQC registered ADHD diagnostic and treatment pathways that are delivered by our multidisciplinary clinical team. We're interested in exploring how early intervention, digital support, and more accessible pathways could help youth justice services support neurodivergent young people earlier, reduce escalation, and improve longer-term outcomes. So I'd love to discuss further. So yeah, please do get in touch. I can put my details in the chat.
Julian, as ever, thank you so much. Really great overview, and to do it in 2 minutes is a big ask, we know. Thank you very much for sharing the opportunities that Dr. Julian can provide to those in youth justice settings. Thank you. If we could have the next slide, please, Eleanor. So last slide. It's been an absolute pleasure. We've heard from Peter from NHS England, who's helped fund this programme of work. We've heard from Peer Power and the fantastic work that Chloe, Jack have done with young people with lived experience, and we can't wait to have more. We'll be able to share more video context from those young people imminently. We've heard from Eleanor and the work she's done to create this toolkit, from hearing from those in youth justice settings. We've heard from 6 innovators. We have the toolkit that we're sharing with you today, and we will be sharing nationally and even internationally at the International Youth Justice Conference in September. It's been an absolute pleasure. Any innovators out there that have joined the call that think that they could adapt for this setting, give us a call, because we would be able to scale and spread it, or work with you to help scale and spread. In the meantime, I want to say thank you very much, and enjoy the sunshine tomorrow when it comes. Thank you guys, much appreciated.